Now, to the Warriors. John, it might be really hard for them because they're 25-25 at the time of this recording. They are destined to play the Lakers in the play-in. And I feel like it's kind of headed there anyway. I'm not sure how consistent Golden State will be able to be for the last 32 games of the year, but you kind of feel like they're starting to figure stuff out. You feel like they are morphing themselves into a different version than the team that won a championship a couple years ago, than the team that last year was wrecked from the inside because of everything that happened in the preseason with Jordan Poole and Draymond Green. So they're morphing themselves into a new version. Klay Thompson is coming to grips with his basketball mortality, right? He can still go on heaters, but he's not chasing the heaters anymore. At least he shouldn't be chasing the heaters. He's chasing the heaters. He's chasing the max contract. Like, he's chasing all of that stuff at his age. If he's not doing that and he settles into a player who can maybe explore the mid-range a little bit more, maybe get to the basket a little bit more, then he's a much more effective player than the one that's just catching and shooting and chasing and hunting those threes. They're 6-1 in their last 7 games. Right? Their net rating in February, 3rd best so far. And granted, February is a weird month because of All-Star and everything else. And you're curious if they're going to be able to maintain their momentum that they have in this month going into the break, that, you know, if you take a week off and guys go to Cancun or Bora Bora or whatever, you know, do you wind up coming back with that same momentum, right? But that 3rd best net rating, I think that number is real behind the Cavs and Mavs. And one day we're going to have a conversation about the Cleveland Cavaliers. And defensively, that's where you're looking at this team. That's where you're looking at Draymond playing the 5, which he could only really do in spurts back then when they had the vaunted death lineup. I won't tell you who created the term the death lineup, but it's probably the host of this podcast. All right. But back then, you could use the death lineup in spurts and maybe 15 minutes a game. And in those 15 minutes, the Warriors would just overwhelm you and they would just run away and hide. But Draymond couldn't do it for 25 minutes, for 30 minutes. It was just too taxing on his body at that point. Even Draymond at a younger age, right? Because the players and the bodies were so different back then. Even though it was 8 years ago when the Warriors were unleashing the death lineup before Kevin Durant got there and won 73 games. 5s were different in the league. So Draymond, even doing that, there was only so many minutes you could use that without wearing down Draymond. Now he's playing almost the 5 exclusively. And you putting them out there with Wiggins, long and rangy, and can sometimes play a position up. And Jonathan Kuminga, who's beginning to be unlocked finally by Steve Kerr, right? They're a lot more dynamic in February than they were in December. And since Draymond has been back after the culmination of all the incidents, the use of Nurkic, the Rudy Gobert, all of those things, and he took his time away, he's been on not only his best behavior, but he's been really, really effective, and the Warriors have been really, really effective with him. They are almost 6 points per 100 possessions better with Draymond on the floor. They're almost 7 points per 100 possessions better when Kuminga is on the floor. And adding that level of dynamic athlete unlocks some things with the Warriors because, A, they're always going to heavily switch. And yes, Kuminga has some, silly fouls sometimes. But I think, A, when you haven't been playing for a couple of years, yeah, you kind of got to feel your way around it. And luckily, Steve Kerr has unleashed him. Now, some people will say, Steve Kerr came to his senses or Kuminga has matured or whatever it was. But since Kuminga basically said, hey, man, this ain't it, Steve Kerr's been forced to put him out there, and it's worked to their advantage. And I don't know if this is a team, and I've said it before. I said it on Twitter after the game, and of course the league shall strike me down by saying this, John. 5-game series in the first round. Just give me that. If you've got a play-in tournament that determines the 7 and 8, you can give me 5 games in the first round. I'm tripping. I know I'm tripping. It's about the money. But John, 5-game series, first round. Makes too much sense for me.
I would love a 5-game series in the first round. That'd be wonderful. Also, I keep thinking of something Marcus Thompson said when he was on this podcast like a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought of it the other night when I saw it. Did you see that clip where Clay was talking about not closing out games and how hard that is for him?
Mm-hmm.
And Draymond yelled from the other side of the locker room that he didn't get to close out Game 5 of the NBA Finals and basically like grow up. Basically yelled at Clay, grow up. When Marcus was on, he was like, there was always a little bit of something going on in the Warriors locker room, is I think how he put it. There's always a little bit of something going on in the locker room, but basically it spun out of control last year with the Jordan Poole situation and the punch and all that. I think that little bit of something, and some of this comes from Draymond, some of this comes from Steph, some of this comes from Kerr, some of it comes from Clay. I think these guys are all like, hey, if we are just brutally honest at all times with each other, and if we got to have a fight, we have a fight, but everything's out in the open, everything's honest, we are so smart and so talented that we can figure this out. And last year, I think the brutality outweighed the honesty. But this feels like the Warriors from 2 years ago. This feels like the Warriors that won a title. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win a title. The West is way more talented this year than it was 2 years ago. But I watch them do stuff like that, call each other out, slowly get better. You know, Kuminga basically demands a trade because he's not playing enough. And now he's playing a bunch and he's playing well. And you can see that someone sat him down and had a come to Jesus conversation with him saying, we need you here to be a part of a potential title run. But if you want us to trade you to Charlotte or Detroit so you can go play meaningless basketball games instead, like that's on you, but you're also going to be hurting this team here. And I think he's like, all right, cool. Like I'll buy in. I want that title. I want to be part of something special. I want my name remembered for the dynasty. I want another parade, like all of that. Right. And there's just a level of maturity that this team has that not a lot of other teams have, in terms of the good times and the bad. And I think we see that every once in a while through the little clips in the locker room, them calling each other out, Draymond being loud. And I think there was an opportunity earlier this year for it to really spin out of control. Draymond got suspended. Kuminga's calling for more time. I think even Moses Moody asked for more time, around the Kuminga thing. It was like the next day. And somehow it has all settled down. And that to me is a sign of a very, very mature team that can have these open, honest conversations with each other, sometimes even in front of the media.
Yeah.
And still be on the same page with each other and no one fighting to get what's mine. They're just all pulling in the right direction.
Yeah,
I think
that's
always been what we. Yeah, I know that's always what we thought we loved about the Warriors. So it's been nice to see this again from them.
Well, I will say this: they've all been pulling in the same direction, and it all looks good. But it's always icebergs around the corner, right?